Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, the show where we peel back the layers of everyday health mysteries, one cell at a time. I'm Ethan Foster, your resident observer of the human condition. People say I have a special skill for finding the humor in everyday life, but I suspect they're just trying to make me feel better about my endless curiosity.
And I'm Alara Sky, a sharp mind with an even sharper tongue. Though I promise I'll try to keep my wit on a leash. Today we're talking about something near and dear to most breakfast tables, but often misunderstood: eggs. Yes, that humble carton might be more complicated than assembling furniture from a certain Swedish superstore.
Eggs may seem simple, a shell, a yolk, and an egg white, but apparently there's a labyrinth of codes and regulations hidden on the packaging. Why do we do this to ourselves? Can we not just enjoy our omelets in peace?
That would be too easy, Ethan. These days, everything comes with a backstory, including your morning eggs. From how long they sit on the shelf to the final day they grace your fridge, there's a code for everything. It's like the egg is passing you secret notes, and you need a decoder ring to figure them out.
The eggs might as well come with an FBI dossier. We have the Julian date, the plant code, various disclaimers. It's like the shell is the only simple thing, ironically enough.
Indeed. Let's dive into the details. For starters, the USDA allows eggs to remain on store shelves for up to 30 days after packaging. That means those farm-fresh eggs you scooped up on a grocery run could be hitting their 1-month anniversary sitting in your fridge.
Right? So you might think you're cracking a brand new egg for your Sunday brunch, but in reality, that egg might remember a time before your last power bill arrived. Now, part of this is because of something called the Julian date.
The Julian date is a 3-digit number that basically tells you which day of the year the eggs were packed. For example, 001 is January 1st, and 365 is December 31st. If you see 256, it means they were packed on the 256th day of the year, sometime in September. It's like each egg is wearing a tiny timestamp, only you have to decode it.
That's right. If you're not used to seeing Julian dates, it might look like some random triplet of digits. I used to think it was the secret combination for unlocking a hidden egg compartment. Turns out it's just marking the day they got packaged.
Yes, but it's crucial, because once you know the Julian date, you can gauge freshness. Eggs are generally freshest 4 to 5 weeks after packaging, so if you see a number that corresponds to a date over a month ago, that egg may be more of a wise old grandparent than a spring chicken, pun intended.
That's a great pun, Alara. Now, aside from the Julian date, there's also a letter P. That's not an attempt to make the egg look edgy with some random letter. It stands for the plant code, meaning it tells you the specific facility where your eggs were packed.
Yes. So if there's ever a recall, you can figure out if your carton is affected by referencing that code. It's basically the plant's fingerprint. It's amazing that eggs, which seems so uniform, come with all these layers of behind-the-scenes data.
Indeed. And if you're feeling uncertain about how long your eggs have lingered at home, there's the classic float test. Put an egg in a bowl of water. If it floats, it might be older. But older eggs aren't necessarily bad. You just want to crack them in a separate bowl and check for suspicious smells or colors. Because the last thing you want is to ruin your entire omelet mix with one questionable egg.
Exactly. Eggs that float might just have larger air cells inside, but you won't know for sure if they're inedible until you do that final aroma check. Nothing beats your sense of smell when determining if an egg has gone off. Trust your nose.
That's a great piece of advice. Another tip is to store your eggs in their original carton in the coldest part of your fridge. The door might look like a cute egg holder, but it's the Wild West of temperature changes. Every time you open or close the door, your eggs get an unwanted sauna session.
Right. Keeping them in the coldest part of the fridge is a better way to ensure they last. Eggs are fairly sensitive, and if they had a union, they'd probably go on strike whenever we subjected them to frequent temperature shifts.
Probably. Now, there's also the sell-by date and the Julian date, which can get confused. They aren't the same thing, right?
Correct. The sell-by date is about when the store should stop displaying the eggs, but not necessarily the exact date those eggs can never be used again. The Julian date is the actual day they were washed, graded, and placed in cartons. That's the golden piece of intel if you're serious about freshness.
So you might see a sell-by date that's earlier or later than you'd expect based on the Julian date. It's all about local regulations and how each state handles labeling. Some states might require an expiration date or a sell-by date, while others only require the pack date.
That's right. So if you're traveling around the country, don't be alarmed if you see a variety of labeling approaches. Some cartons might look like you're reading hieroglyphics, while others have just a few bits of info.
One universal rule is to buy the eggs before that sell-by or EXP date if you see it. Then once you get home, store them properly. That's how you get the best quality. Eggs are safe to use for several weeks if kept cold, so it's not an instant crisis once the store's display date passes.
Exactly. We're not defusing a bomb. We're just making breakfast. But the more knowledge you have, the better decisions you can make in the store. Now let's talk about the USDA grading system, which is voluntary. Companies can pay the USDA to have their eggs graded. If they pass, they get a special shield or seal. That means the eggs have been inspected for shell quality, interior quality, and so on.
So, if I see a grade AA or A, it's a sign the company took that extra step. But if I don't see the USDA shield, it doesn't automatically mean the eggs are subpar. Maybe the company just chose not to pay for that service.
Precisely. It's more about reassurance. Some people like the comfort of knowing the USDA took a peek at the eggs. Others might just rely on their own brand trust or local sourcing.
We should also mention the myriad certifications. We have UEP certified, Certified Humane, American Humane Certified, and more. Each has its own set of standards for hen welfare, environment, and so forth. It's like browsing an entire library of labels.
Indeed. For instance, UEP certified means the facility follows guidelines set by the United Egg Producers. Then, American Humane Certified involves a different set of criteria. Certified Humane goes even further, often requiring that hens have access to the outdoors or free-range conditions. But you need to check the specifics because cage-free doesn't always mean the hens are living their best life under a rainbow.
Right. Cage-free might just mean they're not in individual cages, but could still be confined to a large barn. Free-range typically means they have some access to the outdoors, though how much time they spend there is debatable. Pastured eggs are from hens that roam in fields, pecking at bugs and living the dream.
Pastured eggs often have deeper colored yolks, richer flavors, and potentially better nutrient profiles. That bright, almost orange yolk can be a sign that the chicken's diet was more varied. There's a reason people who try pastured eggs rarely want to go back.
That's a big point Dr. Mercola brings up. The difference between conventional eggs from hens and CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, and eggs from hens that actually roam around. The nutritional difference can be significant.
Exactly. If the hen's living conditions are subpar, it often shows up in the egg. Meanwhile, a hen that's free to forage often produces an egg that tastes better and offers more beneficial nutrients. And if you're willing to pay a little extra, you might notice a big difference on your plate.
Speaking of paying extra, it's crucial to check your grocery store shelves. Sometimes the so-called premium egg might also be older if the turnover is slow. That's another reason to look at the packaging codes. It's not just about brand or price.
Yes, the codes matter. People assume a bigger price tag equals fresher product, but that's not always the case. The code is your reality check. If you learn how to read it, you'll know exactly when those eggs left the processing plant.
So, let's talk about some practical tips. If you can swing it, go for pastured eggs. That's tip number 1. Not everyone can do this, but if you can find a local farm or farmer's market, it's worth it for taste and nutrition.
Absolutely. If you can find a small local vendor, you can ask them directly how their hens live. They might even invite you out to see the chickens frolicking in the grass. Always a charming sight if you're into that sort of thing.
And if local isn't an option, or you're pressed for time, you can look for well-labeled pastured or free-range eggs in stores. Just read the cartons carefully. Check that Julian date if you really want to ensure they're fresh.
Yes, and if you're cracking an egg at home, look for that deep orange yolk. It's a good sign of a well-fed, well-cared-for chicken. Another tip, store your eggs properly. Don't let them roll around in the door shelves. Keep them in the main fridge section.
Right. And the original carton helps, because it shields them from odors in the fridge. Eggs are like sponges. They can absorb weird fridge smells. If you want eggs that taste like your leftover salmon from 2 nights ago, keep them exposed. Otherwise, leave them in the carton.
That's wise. Another aspect is cooking preference. If you like your yolks runny or raw in a smoothie, you definitely want the freshest, highest quality eggs you can find. Some folks even raise their own backyard hens, which is the ultimate solution if your local regulations allow it.
Absolutely. Dr. Mercola himself mentions he raises 6 hens and finds satisfaction in knowing exactly what they're eating. Homegrown eggs have a certain charm. You walk outside, greet your chickens, and collect your breakfast. It's a pretty direct relationship with your food.
Exactly. Of course, not everyone can manage that. Some cities have ordinances about backyard flocks, or you simply don't have the time. But if you can do it, it's an experience. And you'll never question how fresh your eggs are again.
That's for sure. Now, for those who do shop at big supermarkets, you can still get decent eggs by being vigilant. Don't be fooled by fancy packaging that might mask older eggs or questionable sourcing. Look for that date, check the plant code, maybe do some brand research.
And if you want to go the extra mile, consult resources like the Cornucopia Institute's Egg Scorecard, which ranks producers based on transparency and animal welfare practices. That can save you some guesswork. Just be prepared to compare a few brands before you commit.
Right. Once you get in the habit, it's not so daunting. It's like learning to read a second language. Eventually, you'll glance at a carton and go, oh, packed on day 210, that's late July. Plant code P1234, that's a local facility. Sell by in 2 weeks, looks good. and your friends will stare at you in awe.
Exactly. You become the official egg guru of your social circle. Then they'll be texting you pictures of egg cartons at the store, asking, "Is this okay?" You can consider charging a consultation fee if you want.
That might be the next entrepreneurial gig, egg carton consulting. It's a niche market, but hey, you never know.
Absolutely. So once we decode the label, what else do? We definitely want to store them well. Some people even note that older eggs can be easier to peel when hard-boiled.
Right. That's a nice little bonus for deviled egg fans. Fresh eggs are harder to peel, so if you plan on making deviled eggs, maybe let them age a little, but not to the point that they float and smell like a tire fire when you crack them.
Exactly. A moderate middle ground is best. In addition, you might want to consider the nutritional aspects. A well-sourced egg can offer essential fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals. You can even enhance nutrient absorption by pairing your eggs with healthy fats, like coconut oil or grass-fed butter.
Yes, that helps with fat-soluble vitamins in the yolk. Some folks blend raw yolks into smoothies, but obviously that's a personal choice. If you do it, you want top-notch fresh eggs from a trustworthy source.
Absolutely. Let's recap the main points. First, check the Julian date if you want to see when the eggs were packaged. Second, the USDA allows eggs to be sold up to 30 days after that packaging date, so keep that timeline in mind. Third, look for the P code to know where they came from.
And remember that storing eggs in the door is a bad idea. Keep them in the coldest part of your fridge in the original carton. If you're unsure about an egg's age at home, do the float test, but also rely on your nose once you crack it.
Then pay attention to certifications if you care about animal welfare or organic standards. There's UEP certified, American Humane certified, Certified Humane, USDA organic, and more. Pastured eggs generally offer the best taste and nutrition, so look for them if possible.
Absolutely. And don't get thrown off by differences in labeling from state to state. Some states require a sell-by date, others don't. That's why you might see multiple dates and codes on one carton, but fewer on another.
Knowledge is power. And in this case, it's the power to make sure your sunny-side-up eggs are as fresh and flavorful as possible. All it takes is a bit of detective work.
I never thought my life would involve detective work about eggs, but here we are. This is the world we live in, folks. But if it means better breakfast, I'm all in.
Indeed. And if you find a local farmer's market, seize the opportunity to talk directly to the folks who raise the hens. It's often the best way to ensure quality. Plus, they usually have great stories about their chickens' antics.
True. Chickens can be surprisingly entertaining. And who doesn't love an entertaining origin story for their morning omelet?
Precisely. Before we wrap up, let's address one more fun fact. The best by or use by date is not the same as the Julian date. The best by date is more of a general guideline. The true measure is the pack date plus how you store them.
Right. In the end, your nose, eyes, and a good look at the carton can tell you most of what you need to know. Eggs are resilient, but not immortal.
Nicely put. So the next time you're in the egg aisle, channel your inner sleuth. Check the day of the year, the packaging facility, and make an informed choice. Your future omelets, quiches, and scrambled eggs will thank you.
Well said. And that's all for today's journey into Dr. Mercola's cellular wisdom. We hope you feel more egg-lightened. See what I did there?
That was extra cheesy, Ethan. But we'll let it slide because we're signing off. Thanks for joining us, everyone. May your egg hunts be successful, your breakfasts be delicious, and your knowledge well scrambled.
Indeed. This has been Ethan Foster and Alara Sky. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember that behind every egg carton is a story worth cracking open. Take care, folks.
Goodbye, everyone, and happy decoding.